We now come to the backbench debate on coastal communities. Steff Aquarone to move.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm delighted to be leading my first ever debate in this chamber and on the vital topic of coastal communities. I'm very grateful to the members from across the House who supported my application for this debate, and I thank the Backbench Business Committee for granting it. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is the first debate on coastal communities of this new Parliament, and it can't come soon enough. There are a number of traditional divides which people break our country down into. Rural versus urban, affluent versus deprived, industrial versus agrarian. However, the divide between coastal and inland communities is often overlooked, and yet this divide has wide-ranging impacts and leads to a unique situation for these areas. In fact, many of my constituents in North Norfolk may share far more similar experiences to our coastal siblings in Cornwall, almost 8 hours away, than with those just half an hour down the road in Norwich. What coastal communities across the country often feel is that despite the incredible contribution they make to our country, economically, culturally and environmentally, the system is not working for them. Our health and economic outcomes are poorer than our inland neighbours. Our environment is battling the challenges of climate change, coastal erosion and the sewage dumping scandal. But still, the government doesn't seem to think we're worthy of proper representation in the form of a dedicated coastal communities minister. I want to first turn to the health challenges faced by our coastal communities. In 2021, Professor Sir Chris Whitty published a landmark report into the health outcomes in seaside towns and coastal communities. What he uncovered was shocking. We have higher rates of poor health and disease. The rates of cardiovascular disease and cancer are higher, and those diagnosed with these diseases have poorer outcomes. They also suffer with them for longer. Data shows that on average, residents in Hull live more than 25% of their lives in poor health. That's around a quarter more than the national average. That results in a lower quality of life and well-being, a greater reliance on health services and shorter lives overall. Now, the work of Hull's Public Health Department to tackle these challenging statistics is commendable under the leadership of Mike Ross and the Lib Dem-led council there, but coastal health inequalities need to receive more direct government attention. The disparities in life expectancy which were found are particularly shocking, and I want to take members on a brief tour of my Norfolk neighbours to outline this point for them. To the east of my constituency is Great Yarmouth, and to the south is Broadland. These areas are very nearby. They share similar amenities in many situations and have shared frustrations with the A47. However, a baby born in Great Yarmouth has a life expectancy 4 years shorter than one born just over the border in Broadland. Both these babies would be proud Norfolk residents, both live within touching distance of our Broads National Park, both may even grow up sitting in adjacent seats at Carrow Road football ground. But the challenges we faced in coastal towns and communities means that there'd be a disparity in their health, in their well-being, and even in how long they would live. For communities so nearby, so similar, this cannot be seen as an acceptable status quo. Our coastal communities deserve to live longer, better, healthier lives than they do now. North Norfolk faces its own coastal health challenges. We've lost Blakeney Surgery, serving many coastal villages with otherwise poor transport links. Benjamin Court Reablement Centre has been closed down, for now, removing a vital asset which allowed local people to recover outside of hospital and nearer their families. Cromer Hospital also needs the support and funding to provide more services closer to our communities, preventing them from having to travel to Norwich for vital health care. Now, Professor Whitty points out that coastal communities share many more of these challenges with each other than their inland neighbours. It was clear to him that action needed to be taken. We all listened to him when he was on our TV screens during the pandemic, and I hope the government can take his advice just as seriously now. Our coastal communities are major economic drivers. We have a thriving tourism industry which was contributing £17 billion a year to our economy before the pandemic struck and supports hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country. Our hospitality industry plays host to talented hoteliers, chefs, publicans, chip shop owners and many more. A visit to the Blakeney Hotel, enjoying lobster and crab at Rocky Bottoms in West Runton, a pint at the Hill House in Haysborough, or some dessert at Crumble Crib in Sheringham are all excellent ideas for anyone taking a trip to our part of the world. And tourists have been doing this for centuries. Jane Austen sung the praises of Cromer in my constituency in the book Emma. She described it as the best of all sea-bathing places. Although I'd have to say that the whole of North Norfolk qualifies for that level of praise. I will gladly give way.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for giving way. My constituency of North Warwickshire and Bedworth could not be further from the sea. However, I have spent many happy holidays in Cromer and Sheringham, and I am so delighted that he has been returned to this house as the representative for those wonderful communities. Could he tell me how wonderful Cromer, Sheringham and the North Norfolk coast is? And I would have to say that I would prefer to swim in the sea in Sheringham than in Cromer. Does he agree with me?
Absolutely no comment on the latter, but I welcome her contribution. And no advance sight was given of my speech, but I will very momentarily move on to this. But I think her presence here today serves to remind us all that it is not just MPs who represent coastal communities who have a stake in their prosperity. And I thank her for her words. Almost perfectly timed. In more recent times, we have the 2024 Peer of the Year in Cromer. And the excellent North Cottage in Cromer, run by Andrea and Jerry, which was recently awarded Self-Catering Accommodation of the Year at the Suffolk and Norfolk Tourism Awards. Cromer, Madam Deputy Speaker, also plays host to a Banksy artwork dated in his 2021 tour of the East Coast. The artwork highlights, with a queue of hermit crabs looking on at empty shells, one of our greatest challenges in coastal communities, second homes and the wider housing crisis. In North Norfolk, we've been plagued by huge levels of second homes and empty homes. Outside the City of London, we have the highest level of homes which are empty or infrequently used in all of England. These properties are carving the core out of many small and historic communities, and in too many cases contribute very little back. Our poorest are sitting on ever-growing waiting lists, while the rich treat our coastal villages just like a Jane Austen-era summer jaunt, leaving them to suffer for the rest of the year. In Wells next to the sea, 40% of the town is second homes and holiday lets. And in some parts of that town, only 1 in 10 homes are somebody's main residence. I'm delighted that after years of lobbying, we're able to levy a 100% council tax increase on those second homes. This will bring in £1.7 million for the District Council, allowing them to support more affordable housing and provide homelessness services. But North Norfolk, I will, of course.
I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. I'd like to also refer to the fact that Jane Austen doesn't only mention Cromer, but also mentions Ramsgate in Pride and Prejudice, but certainly less salubrious ways than she might refer to Cromer. But Ramsgate and Wells next to the sea both share the concerns that you have pointed out in terms of those short-term holiday lets. Would he support mine and many of my colleagues' concerns about the need for not just a registration scheme, but also a licensing scheme for short-term holiday lets in order to be able for local authorities to be able to control and shape their own local economies?
The honourable member for her contribution. It's not ideological. We have to be really pragmatic in these things, but of course holiday lets, the right sort, can bring in welcome tourism to North Norfolk, but there is also a safety issue regarding regulation, which I'm very sympathetic to. But I'd be very interested in talking in more detail about our shared interest in this matter at another time. I will, of course.
For giving way, congratulate him on securing this very important debate that affects so many constituencies around the country. On the point of the lets, in Seaview Street in Cleethorpes, in my constituency, there has been a noticeable uptick in the number of Airbnbs. That street has got a really unique identity, and these Airbnbs actually are really taking away from the impact of the local businesses there, the local tourist trade, because the Airbnbs are using those shop facades. Does he think that there should be more done to reduce the Airbnbs and protect the unique identity of some of these shopping streets? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Your member for her contribution. I do think more should be done, purely because it's a classic example of both unintended consequences of the explosion of a very successful tech platform that was originally designed for people to let out spare rooms and is now a mainstream booking platform, but also the inevitable fact that legislation moves slower than life. Again, I'd be very interested in sharing further discussion about this topic that affects us both. In Cornwall, because we're not alone in this struggle, around 14,000 second homes are sitting empty while they're also in the midst of a critical housing crisis. And I know this is an issue. Yes, of course.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Is he surprised to hear that in Cornwall, locally, Reform are campaigning against second homes, yet Reform nationally voted against taxes on second homes?
I thank him for his contribution. I am a little surprised. I'm not too familiar with Reform's tax policies, but I'm not sure whether that's me or whether that's most of us. Nevertheless, I hope I've done a favour to my honourable neighbour by raising some of the challenges in his constituency, and I'm sure he'd be most supportive of whatever's in their best interests. I know this is an issue which Cornish Liberal Democrats and my honourable friends from St Ives in North Cornwall are fighting hard on, to their great credit, as are many people in this House. Our coastal economies do, however, face struggles. From 2009 to 2018, half of coastal towns saw a decline in employment compared to only 37% for inland communities. We've got much higher rates of self-employment and part-time employment. By the nature of our tourist-driven economy, we've got significant seasonal variation as well. And many of the small local businesses are deeply concerned after years of feeling left behind that increases to national insurance could squeeze them even further, and for some this might be the final straw. But our economies are also changing to meet the new opportunities of the future. Coastal communities have been at the forefront of the renewable energy revolution. They are the key parts of the manufacturing process for wind turbines or hosting the sites where the cables for their energy make landfall. In Backton, in my constituency, there are amazing opportunities for carbon capture and storage and hydrogen generation as we undergo a green transition there. Our coastal communities have so much economic potential and opportunity just waiting to be unlocked, and I hope the government can support and enable them to flourish in years to come. One of the most special things about our coastal communities is the environments that they possess. Visitors to Salthouse Marshes in my constituency might be lucky enough to catch a glimpse of the migratory snow bunting, or moving north to Holcombe and over the border to Holme Dunes live some of the ever-decreasing natterjack toads. These are precious, unique and environmentally important landscapes and areas, but they're facing significant challenges too. Anyone who lives in a coastal community would have been furious at the shameful sewage scandal which has been unfolding for years. Precious beaches being tainted with the dumping of raw sewage by water companies is a national disgrace and shows no regard for the importance of the coast to the wildlife and residents. I'm delighted by the work we've done locally to secure blue flag beaches for much of North Norfolk, but there is still so much to do, and I'm pleased that my lobbying for more investment in our sewage system...
Will the Honourable Member give way?
Of course I will.
The Honourable Member, thank you for giving way. He talks about the environmental challenges of our coastal communities, one of which is that many of them are faced with hundreds of miles and thousands of pylons moving electricity from one place to another. Does he agree with me that actually we need to find the way to put these cables underground to protect our beautiful coastal communities?
Well, thank you for his intervention, and I'm pleased to associate myself with the sentiment behind his remarks, because I think it was actually Ed Davey, as the Energy Minister in the Coalition, who scoped out the possibility of an offshore ring main for East Anglia, an even better solution than trying to bury cables under the ground. So I welcome his intervention. Our coastal communities are also on the front line in facing down the effects of climate change. I've spoken many times in Parliament about the coastal erosion that we face in North Norfolk, and I'm afraid I make no apology to members for sounding like a broken record, but as a result of man-made climate change, North Norfolk's coastline villages like Haysborough, Trimmingham and Overstrand are rapidly being claimed by the North Sea. We're not alone in this fight. Communities along the North Sea coast are facing similar worries, and new modelling also shows this concern is wider spread than previously thought, with areas of the southwest now at threat of erosion too. My constituents look at projects like the Thames Barrier, where we've taken bold steps and built infrastructure to protect communities from the effects of rising sea levels, rightly, and extreme weather events, and wonder whether the government would deliver the same level of attention to them. I won't allow our communities to be left behind or written off. We must fight climate change. We must mitigate its impacts, which we are already facing. Now, a fantastic book by Madeleine Bunting, The Seaside, England's Love Affair, charts the story of our seaside towns over the past several decades. It's a story of decline which must be reversed, but also of hope and resilience. I can absolutely see the balance she describes, the fragility of life clinging to the cliffs, but also the social strength, the raw beauty and the economic opportunity. Supporting our local coastal economies, Madam Deputy Speaker, doesn't have to be billions in investment. It needs advocacy and action at the top table, and the right support from government to help people help themselves. She gave the Reynolds Lecture in 2023, and I want to quote a very salient point which she made. Seaside towns don't fit into the public debate about the north-south divide, nor has their decline ever dominated the national narrative in the way that inner cities did in the 80s as a focus of public policy, or even the former mining and industrial towns. Seaside towns have been left to struggle with their own decline. I've covered just some of the key pillars of the challenges that our coastal communities face, as well as their resilience and the opportunity we have as a whole country to support them. What frustrates me greatly is that despite these wide-ranging and various challenges, the responsibilities for supporting them are fragmented and siloed across government. I'm obviously delighted to see the Minister in his place today to respond to the debate. His remit contains, however, only the communities aspect of our coastal communities. We've got unique health challenges, economic challenges and opportunities and major environmental importance. And our coastal communities are too important to be bit parts of different portfolios. We urgently need to take an holistic approach to supporting them, understanding how these factors interact with each other. We need to be able to see and understand the impact of economic outcomes on health and well-being, how our environmental challenges, but also our renewable energy opportunities could go hand in hand to support one another. That's why I've been calling for the creation of a Minister for Coastal Communities, to give us a specific representative speaking up for our areas in government. This is a call with cross-party support, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the previous Parliament, MPs from across this House supported it. I hope that with the wide range of members present today, we show the government that a similar consensus still exists for getting us a seat at the table and making the needs and opportunities of coastal communities heard and acted upon. I'll draw my remarks to a conclusion as I'm very keen and excited to hear the contributions from all members today here present and hear about what makes their own communities so special. But I hope that everyone can think about how coastal communities have impacted their lives, whether they were a summer holiday destination, a weekend getaway, a university town, or the place they've called home for generations. Think about why they matter to you. Think about what they've given to us all, not just in economic contribution, but in memories and in experiences. The memories from holidays with family and loved ones, the laughter and smiles of building sandcastles on our beaches as a child, or with children as your own. The timeless enjoyment of windswept fish and chips, warming us as we watch the waves crash against the shoreline. The way that Turner or Constable captured coastal beauty in their artworks, coastal walks, arcades, swimming, surfing, even seal spotting. Remember what coastal communities have given to us. And today, when we can come together and make sure we give back to them and protect them and let them create many more memories for generations to come.
Yeah.
The question is, as on the order paper, and members will have noticed there are a lot of people on their feet wanting to speak, so I will try and get as many people in as I can, and I am imposing an immediate 3-minute time limit. Lorraine Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For nearly 4 decades, our seaside towns have shaped the outcome of elections. Yet, despite this significance, we have been overlooked, struggling with deprivation, economic decline and crumbling infrastructure. This crisis is particularly evident in my constituency of Blackpool, North and Fleetwood. My constituency bears the scars of deindustrialisation and decline of the fishing industry. Income deprivation is rampant and job opportunities are limited. Health inequalities are stark and our infrastructure is in disrepair. Coastal residents on average earn £2,800 less than those inland, and crime and antisocial behaviour is 12% higher. Our health crisis is also dire, with residents 15% more likely to suffer an early preventable death. Cancer mortality rates are 9% higher on the coast, and our rates of respiratory disease 3 times the national average. Our coastal properties are also a third cheaper, leading to more houses of multiple occupation and poorer living conditions. These challenges are not abstract numbers. They are lived reality of families struggling to make ends meet, young people seeking opportunities that don't exist, and communities suffering from the daily impact of dirty business and historical contamination. Labour is working to reverse this, with its ambition plans to grow the economy and our commitment to fixing the NHS. Blackpool, North and Fleetwood was founded on ambition. Our forefathers envisaged thriving model seaside towns, combining prosperity, tourism and industry. Yet today, sadly, they are a shadow of that vision. It's time to restore that ambition with real investment and leadership. The government's move towards regulatory reform is essential, but our communities are impatient. They have been let down for too long, and we need to see tangible delivery now. To truly deliver, we need a Minister for Coastal Communities. Coastal communities face unique challenges that require a dedicated voice in government. A minister who understands our specific needs and ensures that they are addressed through a coordinated strategic approach to investment and regeneration. While top-down reforms provide essential structural change, they must be matched by bottom-up solutions shaped by local knowledge and intelligence. A minister could help us seize private sector investment from the clean energy transition. This could enable growth now, revitalising our docks, improving transport links and create long-term sustainable employment. Madam Deputy Speaker, coastal communities have been part of this country's success for generations. It's time we give them the investment and leadership they deserve, or risk losing them forever. Thank you.
I call Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a native of a coastal community in Devon, I am well versed in the challenges that living there presents. However, I also believe that we must highlight the opportunities they present too. It is all too easy to depict coastal towns, cities and communities as run down and tired, places where people head to retire or only have work 6 months of the year when the tourists roll in. Yet whilst there is undoubtedly a lot of truth in this, there is also a huge amount to value and celebrate about our coastal communities. Because if there weren't, why would people flock from right across the country and indeed the world to visit? My constituency of South West Devon has significant suburbs of Plymouth, Plympton and Plymstock, and then swathes of the coastal South Hams and Dartmoor. So in terms of the challenges that coastal community in my constituency faces, they are much like those elsewhere. The challenge of housing for local people, transport connectivity.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Yes, of course.
On that point, I thank her very much for giving way. She's beginning what I'm sure will be an exquisite speech, but she hits the nail on the head there, does she not, when she talks about transport connectivity, because that's one of the great problems that unites all our coastal communities, is it's very difficult to get anywhere, and in a community like mine, in Dumfries and Galloway, it's 80 miles to the nearest hospital. Perhaps rather than a new minister looking at coastal communities, what we need is the existing transport ministers to put the foot down.
My honourable friend makes a very, very valuable point, and although my constituency is a long way from his, we have significant problems too. We're on a peninsula. If the trains stop, we can't really get in and out, so I completely understand the need for a focus on transport. We also have the health and education inequalities that have been mentioned, and the threats from the new government's attack on businesses with increased national employers insurance impacting not just businesses, but our local hospice St Luke's, vital community pharmacies like Tubbs in Newton Ferrers, as well as changes to business and agricultural property relief, which also threaten the future of long-standing family businesses. However, arguably one of the biggest opportunities for South West Devon is the continuing growth of the Marine Autonomy Hub at Turnchapel Wharf in Plymstock. Over 300 years of history as a shipyard and a naval base. 20 years ago it was sold by the MOD and bought by Yacht Havens Group, who over the last 12 years have invested in that, and it has attracted more marine-based businesses with a specific focus on marine autonomy, developing autonomous vessels for the future of scientific surveying, defence and humanitarian work at sea. This development highlights some of the unique opportunities we have in a coastal community of South West Devon and Plymouth. With the easiest and quickest access from land to deep water in the country, my constituency is perfectly placed for businesses looking to do sea trials underwater, a niche but essential opportunity for our local coastal community. Last Friday, Thales delivered the first end-to-end autonomous maritime mine hunting system to the Royal Navy from my constituency. The project has been part of the Joint Armament Cooperation Organisation and has also served the French Navy as well as the Royal Navy. However, I believe it is also vital that we do not fall into the trap of looking at coastal communities solely through the lens of built-up areas, towns and cities. The coastal communities of my constituency have a wide range of identifying factors, and as the government's local government reorganisation work progresses, with councils across the country looking at how they best serve their own interests, it is important that they also look at the interests of those they are seeking to absorb. Edging a unitary authority with its own proud identity in Plymouth, and with part of it located within Devon County Council and 2 district councils, the future will look different for much of my constituency, but taking in the rural character of communities like mine is essential. And whilst the population of towns and cities like Plymouth may significantly outnumber the population of the rural parts, it is essential that they pay real value on both the population size versus land mass. Identity matters, and people often choose to live where they do to be close by the sea, but that doesn't always mean they're in those built-up towns and cities. Local government reorganisation has to be in the best interest of everyone, not just the urban area, whether it's on the coast or not. So to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, the previous government recognises the challenge faced and invests significant sums of money in communities like mine to help them close the gap with non-coastal communities. So I believe going forward we must be proud of the coastal communities, which are such a key part of our national identity as an island nation, and I am committed to finding the balance between pursuing opportunities while tackling the challenges we all face.
Rutland.
Deputy Speaker, and it's a privilege to represent East Worthing and Shoreham, a fabulous stretch of the stunning Sussex coast where the sea meets the shore of our beautiful collection of towns and villages before giving way to the breathtaking South Downs. But too often coastal towns have been treated as afterthoughts. Once vibrant hubs of industry, culture and trade, too many are now struggling to cope with rising inequalities, economic stagnation, low wages, climate change and a housing crisis that is forcing families out of their own neighbourhoods. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is hope on the horizon and the tide is coming back in, because this new government is committed to steadying the ship, pulling our coastal communities out of the sewage-blighted, murky waters and setting sail towards a brighter future. The housing crisis in our coastal areas is one that cannot wait. The skyrocketing costs of housing have made it nearly impossible for many of our young people and working families to find affordable homes. House prices in my constituency have risen by 20% in the past 5 years, but wages haven't kept pace. The median house price is now $380,000, almost $100,000 higher than the national average, but our median weekly wage is lower than across the country. So the new homes that this government will build cannot come soon enough, ensuring that local families are not priced out of their communities and people's children and grandchildren don't have to move away to get on in life. Indeed, this was a huge factor in last year's election campaign. I met a couple in their 80s who were voting Labour for the first time ever because their working adult children were still unable to afford to buy a home of their own. And these weren't just your average first-time Labour voters. This lovely couple actually met 60 years ago at the local Conservative dance party. But this government is not only making it easier to own a home of your own, we're also supporting the 17% of households in my constituency who are in the private rented sector with our renters reform bill by ending no-fault evictions, banning rent bidding wars and driving up standards. And I'm glad to be a part of the work of members sitting on this side of the House to bring an end to the exploitation of residents in communities like mine at the hands of poor managing agents who take them for a ride with excessive charges and poor service. Secondly, we're addressing the issue of climate change, committed to building a climate-resilient future by investing $2.65 billion in flood defences, and I'll be making the case for East Worthing and Shoreham to be getting its fair share, given our experience of flooding recently, including in Shoreham in April. But we're also acting on the causes of climate change, aiming to achieve 95% clean power by 2030, and I'm proud to support an extension of the Rampion wind farm in the sea just beyond our shoreline, which will produce enough electricity to power the whole of Sussex if completed. We also need to see investment in our communities, not just for the residents living in them, but to revive our tourist economy and give us the opportunity to show off the delights of our seaside towns. Time is short and I can't talk about too many of them, but certainly our peers, and particularly in Worthing, which suffered last year from a closure, and of course, hopefully restoring the Worthing Lido. Madam Deputy Speaker, the time for change is now. Our community's given so much to the country over the years and it's time we give back, I hope in the form of a coastal communities strategy so that this government can deliver real change for our neighbours.
Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Norfolk for introducing this debate and for an excellent speech. My constituency of Aberdeenshire North and Moray East is a coastal community. It boasts beautiful views of nature, bustling ports and delicious local produce. Peterhead, one of the busiest ports in Europe, with a huge daily fish market, the largest fishing port in Europe. Fraserburgh, a fantastic port town and my home. Fraserburgh Harbour has developed a £300 million master plan, which if brought to reality could deliver more than 1,000 new jobs. Port Soy, a remarkable harbour with unique products locally. Each July, Port Soy hosts the Scottish Traditional Boat Festival, which celebrates the craft behind boats with tremendous events and music. There are many more. Buckie, for example, with a large marine industry. Golfing is a popular leisure pursuit in the constituency, with so many world-class golf courses found right across it. Cruden Bay and Fraserburgh are only two among many. Now, looking across Scotland, there are over 2,000 active Scottish fishing vessels. 3/4 of them fish primarily in inshore waters. The inshore fleet is diverse and includes trawlers, creelers, netters, dredgers and divers. In 2019, there were an estimated 14,092 people directly employed in the seafood sector, many in remote coastal and island communities. I will, of course.
Honourable Member for giving way. Fishing is far more than an industry. It's part of our identity in coastal communities. Does the Honourable Member agree with me that a sustainable inshore fishing industry is vital to our economic growth?
I thank you for that point, and I completely agree, yes. 95.
On that point, I'm grateful. I'll be very quick. To have a sustainable industry, you have to have access to labour. The inshore fleet in his constituency, as in mine, will doubtless be crying out for labour to come in from foreign countries. We're not able to do that because of the way the visa rules are structured.
I thank the Honourable Member for that point, and I do believe the Prime Minister himself agreed with me on this issue of labour shortages very recently. Now, 95% of commercial fishing jobs are located in areas of Scotland that together are home to less than a third of the total population.
Right, Honourable Member, give way.
I will, of course.
Very kind of you. Would the member agree with me that what we desperately need is a proper, fully thought out fishing strategy to support this vital industry of our local communities?
Well, I think that's a very reasonable point, and I thank the member for his intervention. But of course, some of these matters are devolved, and so it might be difficult to have a UK-wide strategy. So, as I say, Scottish exports of fish and seafood were valued at £1 billion and accounted for 60% of total Scottish food exports, 63% of total UK fish and seafood exports. Scotland's seas around our shores make up over 60% of the UK's total waters. But fisheries need confidence to operate. Aberdeenshire Council's recent decision to cut the night watch service at Macduff Harbour is ill thought out and economically illiterate. This is despite an economic development plan for the harbour that was accepted by the Council's Harbour Subcommittee only last December, in which it highlighted the harbour supports around 280 jobs and 11.2 million into the local economy. There are many things I could complain about: depopulation, unemployment, access to healthcare, transport infrastructure, which my honourable member mentioned a moment ago. But let us look hopefully to the future. Continued growth of Scotland's renewable energy sector will be an essential feature of our future clean energy system and potential key driver of economic growth for many of these communities, not least in my constituency. And I want to reassure the honourable member about pylons. None of the cables that are coming ashore in my constituency will see any pylon development within at least 10 to 15 miles of the shoreline. So that's very reassuring. An abundance of remarkable energy resources creates opportunities to meet domestic needs, to exploit new technologies in carbon capture, wave power, hydrogen production, and to export low-carbon energy to others in these islands and to Europe. These developments bring great hope to many struggling coastal communities in Scotland, not least my own. Thank you.
Kevin McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd also like to thank the Honourable Member for North Norfolk for securing this debate. I think it is very timely and it is overdue. And I'm also really glad to hear from everyone here that lives in coastal communities all around this great country about their places, the places they represent, many of which, and this is where I'm very grateful for my parents, I visited on caravan trips around the country when I was younger. So the tourism industry in this country will be very pleased about this debate. But also, I'm very grateful for all of the instances of challenges and inequalities that many of our communities face. The report by Professor Chris Whitty was really important for me when I was working at the NHS for really fleshing out what some of the unique challenges that many coastal communities share are in terms of inequalities of access to health, but also health outcomes, employment outcomes, transport difficulties. The lists go on. And I think this is what's so important. Not only are the coasts of this country the interface between the land and the sea, They are also the interface between many of the greatest challenges that we face as a country. And I think every member, I'm pretty certain, in this debate will be able to give examples from their own constituency where there are high levels of inequality, high levels of social deprivation, high levels of challenge, against the backdrop of often beautiful, stunning landscapes, access to nature, places that people want to live, places where actually many people, not just on holidays in a caravan, but also just want to visit on a day trip or want to retire to. And it seems such a terrible shame that somehow we've got ourselves locked into a system that the places that should be among the most desirable in this country are the places that face some of the biggest and most entrenched challenges. Some of those are just intrinsic to being by the water. You know, the damage to buildings and the maintenance cost on housing and infrastructure is higher at the coast. And that's not really accommodated for in a lot of our public spending decisions. And when we're thinking about what infrastructure we have and how we support people to maintain their houses. But if you go to my constituency and look around Sheerness, many of the social housing in this coastal town is very, very damaged and is degraded, largely because of the impacts of the sea, as well as all of the financial challenges the rest of the country face. And Sittingbourne and Sheppey, my constituency, does have some unique features. It is a rural community. It is two industrial towns in my constituency. It is a coastal community. It has nature reserves and wildlife, but it's also got big industry, big power stations, you know, massive paper mills, real opportunities. And it's these opportunities that I think we can capture and we can build on. The reason I've got twin towns in my constituency is because of the sea and the access to water. And yet we're not taking advantage of that in transport terms. So I very much endorse the call for a Minister for Coastal Communities, but even more so, I think it's a coastal strategy. The one thing I'd really like to see this government commit to is developing a cross-cutting coastal strategy that addresses all of these needs.
Bernard Jenkin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable gentleman for Sittingbourne and Sheppey. And I don't need to repeat everything he said because it all applies in spades to my own constituency of Harwich and North Essex, which is very much a coastal constituency, not just Harwich, but Manningtree, Mistley, Brightlingsea, West Mersey, and they are all places of very varying economic prosperity. But particularly Harwich, I wish to talk about, because it's so typical of what has happened to very prosperous Victorian port towns, where the rows of glorious terraces of very grand houses would be worth millions if they were near London. But they are bedsit territory for some of the most unfortunate in our society, who find themselves getting off the train and looking for somewhere to stay. Having said that, as the Honourable Gentleman said, and as the Honourable Member for North Norfolk said in his opening remarks, and I thank him for getting this debate, and obviously it's much too short a time for this very important debate, but these places are full of potential. Harwich is an absolutely unique historic town. It's where the Mayflower sailed from in 1520. The captain of the Mayflower lived in Harwich, and his house is now a museum. And when you say to the Americans, do you realise you originally came from Harwich, they suddenly, their eyes are open. They think it's all about Plymouth. They're not right. And when you tell them what they could come and see, instead of some fake Victorian steps, they could come and see the real house of the captain of the Mayflower, they are amazed. And it was an important Napoleonic fort. It was grew from a wonderful medieval naval base to being a very important naval base during the First and Second World Wars. The entire German fleet was scuttled of submarines, was gathered in the estuary of Harwich. And it's full of potential. We've got the free port, we've got the offshore wind industry, we've got wonderful manufacturing businesses with wonderful stable employment forces. This place is full of potential, but I do worry, without being championed by our own tendering district council, which has done such a marvellous job, which is being lined up for abolition, that we won't get the same support. And I think if the Minister in his remarks and winding up can assure us that these coastal communities will get the same support that they've enjoyed from their district councils as they've always enjoyed from the new local government set up, I have my doubts, I'm afraid. I'm most grateful if you can address that.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In many ways, my constituency of Southport is a typical coastal community. And like many coastal towns, it's seen better days. It's coping with challenges that don't necessarily impact inland areas to the same extent. Now, part of that negative change is due to the nature of the town's economy. But a big part of it is due to its geography. It's a seaside town. And what made many of our seaside towns successful originally, the sense that they were a trip away from the big city, that you could travel for miles through the countryside to get to them, now militate against us. Because while it once might have been appealing to families from Manchester, say, to take a packed lunch to the seaside and enjoy the scenic train route through Lancashire, it's no good for our commuters to still be stuck on that scenic route, trundling across the northwest to get to work and back every day. What was once our strength has now become our weakness. Austerity has hit us hard too. The former government removed in excess of £200 million a year from the local area. The multiplier effect of that has had an impact on private businesses in the town, because when so many of your customers see that their wages aren't keeping up with prices, then small businesses fail, and we've seen a lot of that in Southport in the last decade. Austerity manifests itself in different ways in different areas. And in my town, austerity has manifested itself most prominently in the closure of the town's seaside pier. Due to a botched repair job 25 years ago, there are now structural problems estimated to cost over £10 million to fix. The pier's in local authority ownership, and thanks to the previous government, the local authority just hasn't got the money to bring about the necessary repairs. Because of this, I've been campaigning on innovative ways to ensure that piers across the country are safeguarded for the next generation. Now, this Labour government is supported by more coastal Labour MPs than at any point in our country's history, as is evidenced by the overwhelmingly empty benches opposite. The common issues faced by coastal towns are felt keenly by my colleagues on this side of the House. And it's with that in mind that I'm pleased the government is willing to commit to support our coastal communities, and I too wish to put on record my wish to see the creation of a specific minister for coastal communities. The issues our areas share are so specific to the coast, so common to each other, and so important to our residents, that government will gain greatly from a dedicated minister, making sure our towns and areas are heard in this place. I've outlined some of the challenges our towns face, and I'm sure that if government steps up and meets those challenges, they'll be given the chance to implement the decade of national renewal that we know the country needs.
With an immediate 2-minute time limit, Siân Berry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I am very pleased to speak in this debate, and thank you to the member for North Norfolk for calling it. Brighton was called by a House of Lords report on the future of coastal communities in 2019, probably the UK's most successful seaside community, and we are. And I'm very, very pleased the City Council has recently set up a new seafront development board, and I've had a very positive meeting already with its chair to discuss how we continue to make our seafront better, to support and grow our city's wonderful reputation for heritage, music, the arts, shopping, amusements, community action, diversity, nature and well-being. Now, as others have spoken about, there are currently no government funding schemes specifically for coastal areas and no ministerial focus, and I would echo everybody's comments on that in this House, that we need in our coastal communities focus for the specific challenges we face, because in Brighton too, austerity and Brexit have bitten. Our communities, our people have big problems with housing costs, holiday lets, employment, health, transport and health inequality. These all need dealing with. Yes, I will give way.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Would you agree with me that Brexit is something that has done immense harm to places like Brighton and other coastal communities.
I thank the member for their intervention, and I couldn't agree more. The amount of different sectors of the economy within Brighton and Hove who remark to me upon the impact of Brexit is absolutely huge, not least the cultural industries. I must also echo others and talk a little bit about the regularly appalling state of our sea water, which is a genuine threat to our success. Southern Water has been taken to court, found guilty of criminal behaviour and lying, and still we have sewage overflows off the south coast on a regular basis. I've met sea swimming groups in individual constituencies who have been very sick after swimming in the waters around Brighton, and the only way to get this properly under control is public ownership. Me and my Green colleagues will continue to push for that in this Parliament. And I wanted to very quickly shout out Lucy Davis, who is the brilliant and enthusiastic new director of Brighton Dome. When I met her recently, Lucy told me about the excellent collaboration that's happening between cultural institutions along the Sussex coast. The Coastal Catalyst will support creativity and culture for young people from Bognor Regis to Bexhill, and is exactly the kind of cooperative work that needs to be happening. Madam Deputy Speaker, there's no single solution to the challenges which impact our coastal communities, but we need ambition, vision, a dedicated minister and a proper package of strategic initiatives and funding. And we as MPs can help, working together and with local leaders to build on the ideas, to build up new initiatives that we all agree our communities need because of their very special natures, and to work together to put on the pressure for this to happen.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For too long, coastal communities like Blackpool have been left behind. Despite our stunning coastline, our proud heritage and increased resilience of people, Westminster has neglected us for far too long. Now, with a new Labour government in place, we have the opportunity to turn the tide, to ensure that Blackpool and other coastal communities finally get the support they deserve. Nearly 1 in 2 children in Blackpool living in poverty, and I recently submitted a report to the Child Poverty Task Force based on the experiences of parents and those working with children in Blackpool. Almost 90% of those surveyed said they had financial strain and was damaging children's enjoyment of childhood. This is unacceptable and we must change it. Blackpool's economy has long relied on tourism and associated job roles and has been historically seasonal, insecure and low paid. Local efforts have been done much to create a year-round economy, and the government must support them. This means targeted investment in the sectors that can provide long-term careers. It means helping businesses to grow and expanding skills training to prepare our workforce for the future. With the right support, we can unlock Blackpool's full potential.
Will you give way?
Yes, I'll give way.
Thank you for giving way. Does he agree with me that North West towns have got the best opportunity with a new government for a generation to turn the tide on years of Tory decline and ensure that their best days lie ahead?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I completely agree with my honourable friend and his constituency of Southport. I have many happy memories where my family would go from Blackpool to Southport to the Pontins, but my dad would always go the long way round on the motorway, so it felt like we were going further away than we were. But as I said, this doesn't mean turning our back on tourism and hospitality, it means investing in it. But implementing the rise in the employer national insurance contributions prevents a significant challenge to them, and jobs are at risk. If we are serious about growing our economy and supporting working people, we must give this sector the support it desperately needs. A 12.5% VAT reduction for hospitality and tourism would boost turnover, creating nearly 300,000 jobs over the next decade and delivering billions in tax revenue. This is the kind of bold, ambitious action we need in places like Blackpool to thrive. For too long, places like Blackpool have been left behind, but with the right plan and determination to see it through, we can change that. My constituents demand a voice, and so I'm also calling to appoint a dedicated Minister for Coastal Communities. The last Labour government rebuilt our cities. This new Labour government now has the opportunity to rebuild our forgotten coastal towns. We must deliver a cross-government strategy dedicated in improving health, well-being and prosperity of coastal communities. The Chief Medical Officer rightly said that strong, targeted, long-term action can lift our coastal towns and create a fairer, healthier and more prosperous future for all. My constituents deserve nothing less.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And first of all, I would like to congratulate the member for North Norfolk in securing this extremely important debate. We desperately need a minister for coastal communities, as has been highlighted by some outstanding speeches so far this afternoon. The fact that my Torbay constituency is the premier resort for the United Kingdom is of great pleasure to me. We have six blue flag beaches across the bay. However, once upon a time, Torquay was, at the turn of the 20th century, the wealthiest town in the country. Sadly, Torbay is now one of the most deprived communities, and actually the most deprived community in the west of England. A wicked issue that faces us is pollution in our seas. Whilst we have those lovely blue flag beaches, from time to time, because our sewage system gets overwhelmed, particularly with climate change and the propensity of heavier water at times in the summer, it does get overwhelmed. And so therefore, it is a great sadness that locals have to look on the Surface Against Sewage app as to when it is safe to when it is safe to swim in our actual seas. I would also like to highlight the wicked issues that we have with our NHS and our challenges with our NHS, with our crumbling hospital. But the biggest wicked issue that we actually face is in respect of our poor...
Will he give way?
Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. Will he agree with me that the challenge facing hospitals isn't just about their state or the accessibility thereof, but of the affordability of housing for NHS workers?
Thank you, and you're spot on. Whilst we do, whether from North Norfolk or North Devon or Torbay, we do have challenges around our NHS. It is the challenge of the lack of affordable housing, where we have seen this actually put on steroids by the pandemic, where we saw house prices rise and rents rise and people fleeing from metropolitan areas to live in coastal communities. So let us not leave coastal communities on the edge, just geographically, and make sure that they're not left on the edge economically either, by making sure that we have the coastal communities minister that we all are calling for this afternoon.
Billington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I declare an interest as the Chair of the Coastal Parliamentary Labour Party and Co-Chair of the Coastal Communities All-Party Parliamentary Group with my honourable friend, the Member for Scarborough and Whitby. I am aware that we are in danger of violently agreeing with each other, so I will not repeat much of what has been said. Needless to say, and much of it applies also to East Thanet. What I will cover, however, is the potential that coastal communities have to drive economic growth across their country, our people, our heritage and our environment. Take the government's mission to build 1.5 million homes. East Kent College is working with house builders and construction companies such as W.W. Martin, offering apprenticeships to develop the next generation of workers. If we tap into this potential, there is a demand for non-graduate jobs in our community. There is no reason why it couldn't be the workers from coastal communities that can build those 1.5 million homes across the country and refurbish our shoddy, drafty and damp housing stock. It is important that we build on people's identity and heritage to develop resilient coastal communities. In East Thanet, we have tapped into our artistic heritage with Charles Dickens, J.M.W. Turner. The Turner Gallery in Margate is monument to what can happen when energy and resources are focused into regenerating coastal towns. And of course, our natural environment is not just a nice to have, it is an integral economic asset. But we can't talk about increasing opportunity without first providing security for people. How can you look to the horizon when you're having to watch where you step? Now, this is a mission-driven government with 5 missions to transform the country. These will be much more successfully delivered. Yes, indeed, I will.
Does she agree with me that a strong enabling state bringing forward those 5 missions and investing in a progressive industrial strategy can help our coastal towns thrive in the next decade?
I thank my friend for giving way. And indeed, yes, this needs a place-based approach with that active state. If you want economic growth that really reaches all parts of the country, invest in coastal communities. If you want public services that really improve the experience of people who are most alienated because of state failures, invest in coastal communities. If you want to create an environment that works for nature and people, invest in coastal communities. I'm not just speaking about financial investment, Madam Deputy Speaker, but an investment in government time, energy and focus. Because when colleagues and I on these benches are trying to work out which department will be answering this debate, we literally didn't know. And while I'm obviously delighted to see the Minister in his place here today, the issues raised in this House today span all departments: health, transport, environment, education, Home Office, Treasury and many others. I would simply note, if there is not one Minister who fits the portfolio, then there should be one. A Minister for Coastal Communities who can focus on regenerating our towns and growing our coastal economies. I would just like to end with a point about the last Labour government. In the 90s, cities weren't the places they are today, but the Labour government had a relentless focus on improving them, and the regeneration we've seen is testament to what can be delivered. Coastal towns are in the same position now, and the Labour government has not only an order.
So members will be aware that I'm going to call the front bench at 4:38, which means that not all will now get in. They might think of that when doing interventions. Bayo, Alaba.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And also thank you to the Honourable Member for securing this debate. It's an honour to be here today amongst MPs representing coastal communities and representing Southend and Rochford. I was born on Green Street in East London, and growing up I spent a lot of time going to Southend for days out. At the time, a lot of EastEnders did. They still do, in fact. But tourism has changed. Consumer habits have altered, and industries in coastal communities are typically centred around agriculture, social care, retail, hospitality, which are all usually low-paying sectors. Madam Deputy Speaker, according to the Independent Commission on Neighbourhoods, Southend and Rochford contain 17 neighbourhoods identified with the highest need. High deprivation and a lack of social infrastructure has had a knock-on effect on life expectancy, education outcomes and job opportunities. Where you live should not negatively impact your future. It is essential for creative arts, heritage buildings like the Freight House, the Kurzel, the Cliffs Pavilion and South Church Hall and more. Residents have a passion and a determination to create a sustainable future for Southend and Rochford, and I believe so too. But we need a coastal community strategy which differentiates coastal communities from our inland and rural partners and seeks to address the unique challenges we face. For long-term change, we must diversify industry in coastal communities so hospitality, heritage, tourism can thrive alongside finance, tech and industry. Thank you.
Jane Kirkham.
Madam Deputy Speaker, our coastal communities are likely to have higher deprivation living alongside great wealth. They're often creative hubs. Cornwall attracts many artists and musicians, and Falmouth has the world-class Falmouth University, which grew out of a 100-year-old art school. People come from all across the country and the world to visit our beaches and coastline. However, I am worried about the shore management plan, and managed alignment poses a risk to our beach cafes, car parks and economy in Cornwall. The Port of Falmouth is still very significant. We maintain and repair ships, including military, host cruise ships with new green energy onshore plug-ins, and have plans to regenerate the port to service floating offshore wind and reinstate the freight railway. However, wages are lower than the national average. Many jobs are seasonal and insecure. Hospitality businesses struggle with low margins. The permanently lower business rates that will come in April next year, after the business rate discount expires, will help a great deal, as long as it's permanently lower than the current rate rather than the full rate from pre-COVID. Skill shortages are significant, particularly in hospitality, but also in other skilled professions. And house prices are 13 times wages. There are 24,500 properties for short-term let in Cornwall, up 30% on 2019, while 27 households are on the social housing waiting list. Our second homes are nearly 5% of the housing stock. And I welcome the Renters' Rights Bill, but we also need a toolbox of measures to tackle second homes and short-term lets, including that registration or licensing scheme. Yeah. Good holiday companies are actually calling for it to come in now with those safety inspection measures and to close the business rates council tax loophole. In addition to this, Cornwall's faced underfunding for health and social care and education for years. I also support the call for a broader government strategy on coastal communities. Every policy affects us in potentially different ways than it does urban areas.
Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And today I want to talk about the wonderful, world-renowned cockling industry in Southend Western Lee. Forgive me if this sounds a bit niche, but I'm sure you'll agree that industries like cockling are important to all of us in coastal communities to preserve our heritage, our cultural identity, boost tourism, increase prosperity and employment. Leigh-on-Sea has been synonymous with cockling for, wait for it, 1,000 years. The industry is a vital part of Leigh-on-Sea's heritage, with the old town's cockle sheds serving as a reminder of its maritime past and a huge boost to our tourism sector. The North Thames cockle fishery, one of the oldest in Europe, has implemented measures like seasonal operations and total allowable catch levels to ensure sustainability of cockle stocks. And in 2019, it was given the Maritime Stewardship Council Sustainable Award, a perfect example of sustainable fishing. But there are issues that need addressing, as I heard from our fifth-generation firm of cocklers, Osborne's Fishmongers. They told me people in this country don't eat much shellfish, especially the younger generation. And this is not a trade we want to die out, and I support initiatives like seafood in schools and fishing heroes. The industry brings significant economic benefits to the local community. Nevertheless, the cockling industry in Leigh-on-Sea faces several challenges. They told me the increased pressure to operate more efficiently and sustainably requires long-term investment. After the new cockling licences were finally passed through Parliament after delays with the previous Parliament, Osborne's and others would now like to see their individual licences granted. Preserving local industries like cockling in Leigh-on-Sea is vital for coastal communities. We must continue to support them.
Alison Hume.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituency of Scarborough and Whitby includes some of the most beautiful towns and villages in the country, but it also has some of the worst health outcomes. We've talked a lot about older people in this debate, and I would like to use the time I have to talk about younger people. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm excited by the opportunities that young people in my constituency have with the advent of renewable energy. The Scarborough UTC is already training the engineers of the future who will work on the wind farms off our coast. The Construction Skills Village at Eastfield is training their apprentices in bricklaying, plastering and other trades to help build Labour's 1.5 million new homes. But we must deliver year-round non-graduate careers for our coastal kids to ensure, and we must ensure that funding is not funnelled into cities and universities but into coastal communities. Only by doing this will we deliver our mission to break down the barriers to opportunity.
Thanks, the Honourable Lady, for being so brief. Brings us to the front benches. Edward Morello.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for North Norfolk, for securing this debate. Although on a beautiful day like this, I'm sure I'm not the only one pining for the beach. Great Britain is an island nation and one with a proud maritime history. Coastal communities are central to our cultural identity, our national heritage, and of course, our economy. Yet time and again, they've been overlooked by governments in London, from underinvestment in infrastructure and transport to the devastating impact of water pollution and the broken business rate systems. Coastal communities face unique challenges that require targeted solutions. It's time for proper investment, fairer funding, and a real plan for the future. My constituency of West Dorset is home to the famous Jurassic Coast, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And like many coastal communities, tourism is an essential industry for the area. But tourism also places increased strains on local infrastructure, public services and emergency response teams. Dorset experiences a 42% increase in population during peak seasons. Despite this, rural and coastal areas remain chronically underfunded. The current funding formula fails to account for rurality and the seasonal population fluctuations that we experience. Rural local authorities face higher service delivery costs, yet the government's decision to repurpose the £100 million Rural Services Delivery Grant under a new need and demand basis has removed a crucial lifeline for councils trying to provide transport, emergency services and social care in remote areas, and this is simply unacceptable. One of the greatest threats to coastal economies and to public health is the ongoing sewage crisis. The figures are staggering. In 2022 alone, there was over 320,000 sewage spills recorded across England. As a result, England is ranked amongst the lowest for water quality in Europe. Meanwhile, water companies paid out £1.4 billion in dividends in 2022 alone and £51 million in executive remuneration between 2020 and 2021, all while failing to invest in critical infrastructure to prevent these spills. It's nothing short of a national scandal. This is why the Liberal Democrats are calling for the creation of a Clean Water Authority to replace Ofwat, stronger regulation, increased funding for water regulators to hold polluters accountable, and a dedicated Minister for Coastal Communities to oversee regulation on sewage spills and coastal protections. Madam Deputy Speaker, I must raise the issue of business rates. Small businesses are vital to coastal communities, yet the broken business rate system is holding them back. The government's plans to slash relief for retail, hospitality and leisure from 75% to just 40% will have a devastating blow for many small coastal businesses who are still struggling to recover from the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. This is important because tourism numbers are still down 1/3 from pre-2019 levels. The UK tourism sector directly employs over 3 million people and has experienced heightened job insecurity and reduced hiring rates since that time. Our tourism sector needs targeted support, not short-sighted tax hikes. As other members have outlined, coastal communities are also facing a housing crisis. That is why the Liberal Democrats are calling for a 500% council tax surcharge on second homes in housing shortage areas, new planning restrictions on second home and short-term holiday lets to prioritise local housing needs, and a requirement for all holiday let owners to pay council tax, ending loopholes that let them avoid paying anything at all. These measures will help protect the character of our coastal towns and ensure they remain thriving communities and not just seasonal destinations. Post-Brexit fishing and farming policies have left many coastal communities struggling. The last government's botched Brexit deal threw the UK fishing industry into turmoil. And as we approach the end of the transition period in 2026, uncertainty grows. Too many fish are being exported abroad for processing before being re-imported, leading to higher costs, increased emissions and lost job opportunities. The Liberal Democrats are calling for a renegotiation of trade agreements to protect British farmers and fishermen, greater investment in local fish processing facilities to create job opportunities and boost local economies, and a £1 billion boost to the Environmental Land Management Scheme to support sustainable and nature-friendly farming. Healthcare remains a postcode lottery in rural and coastal communities. In West Dorset, only 14 NHS dental practices serve a population of 101,000, leaving many without access to care. People living in coastal communities across the country face stark health inequalities compared to those in other areas. Reports like the one by Sir Chris Whitty consistently show that rural communities experience poorer health outcomes driven by deprivation, limited access to healthcare, and persistent workforce shortages. These challenges are not inevitable, they are the result of neglect. The Liberal Democrats are calling for a strategic small surgeries fund to sustain struggling rural GP services and a dental rescue package to fix the broken NHS dental contract and guarantee urgent dental care for all. I'm afraid I won't. I'm very keen for my honourable friend to have time to round up. A digital exclusion remains a pressing issue. Many coastal businesses and residents lack reliable broadband and mobile connectivity, impacting everything from emergency response times to economic opportunities. The government must commit to full fibre broadband and reliable mobile coverage for all coastal and rural communities. Rural communities have long been overlooked. As the Honourable Member for Blackpool North and others have eloquently outlined, it is time for a dedicated Minister for Coastal Communities to ensure that our voices are heard in every government decision. We deserve clean waters, thriving businesses, secure jobs and infrastructure that meets our needs. It is time for bold action, not just warm words, if we are to secure the future of our coastal communities for generations to come.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it is a pleasure to wind up this debate on behalf of the official opposition. And I would like to, on the importance of our coastal communities, of which my own constituent in Hamble Valley is a proud member. These communities are rich in history, industry and natural beauty, but also communities facing significant challenges. While these areas are home to thriving tourism, fisheries and local businesses, they continue to struggle with economic inequality, housing pressures and environmental concerns. It is our duty to ensure that coastal communities receive the attention that they deserve. And in that spirit, can I congratulate the Honourable Gentleman, the member for North Norfolk, in securing this debate. His opening speech was a speech that clearly shows that he is committed to his constituency and deeply cares for the people that he represents. Many honourable members today have touched on the unique and impressive heritage of their respective coastal communities, from their evolution as trade hubs, shipbuilding harbours, bases for fishing fleets and tourist destinations, to the modern and diverse settlements that they make up today. And I hope honourable members and you, Madam Deputy Speaker, will permit me a minor indulgence as I add homage to my constituency, my coastal constituency in Hamble Valley. Straddling the Hamble River, from which it gets its name, the communities which line this strip of the Hampshire coastline are as venerable as they are beautiful. Snaking down from charming Curbridge, past beautiful Bursledon and stunning Swanwick, all the way down to Hill Head into the Solent, past scenic marinas and yacht clubs, and many wonderful pubs which, as the weather warms up, as I'm sure all members across this House will be, and as the sun comes out, I will be pleased to visit more often. It's a hard life in Hamble Valley, and being the MP for Hamble Valley, but someone has to live it. But it's not all about blue skies and calm waters all of the time. As members have said, there are challenges facing coastal communities, and we cannot ignore their impacts. And like my constituency, coastal towns and villages struggle with restricted accessibility from poor transport links and increasing environmental risks, higher than average unemployment, compounded by seasonable job instability, disparities in housing income, lower education attainment and the upward mobility of skilled workers, causing a brain drain and further exacerbating all of these issues. Part of these problems stem from the fact that there is currently no national strategy for coastal areas. Coastal towns are usually low population areas and are often conflated with rural areas, which obscures their unique challenges. And as we have touched on, coastal communities are already grappling with the economic inequality, and yet this government continues to burden them with further. Average annual pay in coastal towns is £4,700 lower than the rest of Great Britain, and their national growth rates are much lower despite the historical industrial and commercial strengths that they have exhibited in the past. Now they face tax increases, declining support for high streets and rising employment costs, which threaten to undo years of progress in just a matter of months. Instead of fostering economic growth, we are seeing policies that stifle local businesses and weaken our high streets. If we look, for example, at the government's hike in employees' national insurance contributions to 15%, we can see the fallout that these poor economic choices deliver. Businesses I have spoken to, including pubs and restaurants in my constituency, who rely on seasonal tourism, which are already struggling with high costs, are now having to make difficult decisions about laying off staff, not taking on more staff, and in extreme circumstances, closing venues. This is the exact opposite of what our local businesses need. And the government says its first priority is on delivering growth. Yet the policies that they have enacted, that they've chosen to implement, are going to bring about yet more economic uncertainty, financial worry and labour market instability in these coastal communities. And with the government's recent housing algorithm changes too, we're also seeing dramatic increases in housing targets in coastal communities. In coastal communities near Hamble Valley, such as the New Forest, Fareham and Gosport, we are seeing targets rise by up to 105%. Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset and North Yorkshire are all being tasked with delivering thousands of new homes, yet infrastructure and public services are not keeping pace. Many of our coastal communities depend on a strong and sustainable fishing industry. The last government worked hard to strip EU-imposed quotas that constrained our fishing fleets. However, this government continued pursuit of closer alignment with the European Union raises serious concerns about access to UK waters post-2026. The last government made, I haven't got time, I'm afraid. The last government made significant, no, it's, I haven't got time. The last government made significant investment in our coastal communities. Through the Coastal Communities Fund, £229 million was invested in 369 projects, creating over 7,000 jobs and bringing more than 3 million visitors to our coastal areas. Further, the Future High Streets Fund, Town Deals and Levelling Up Fund and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund provided much needed support to local economies. These initiatives renewed town centres, safeguarded businesses and created thousands of training opportunities. But today we see no commitment to continuing these funds. The current government has already announced that there will be no new funding for the Towns Fund, which I would think is a betrayal of the commitments made to our coastal communities. Madam Deputy Speaker, coastal communities are an integral part of our national identity, and yet they continue to be overlooked by this government. Instead of supporting local businesses, they raise taxes. Instead of investing in our high streets, they cut funding. Instead of protecting our fishing industry, they seek closer ties with the EU that threaten our independence. It is time for this government to change course. We must ensure fair housing policies, sustained economic investment, a strong and independent fishing industry and robust flood defences. Our coastal communities deserve better, and I urge this House to take action to protect their future.
Minister Alex Norris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank you to the Honourable Member for North Norfolk for securing this debate and for the way in which he's led it. As he said in his opening, it was his first and it was an excellent one, and I admire both the poise but also the clarity with which he spoke for this his first Backbench Business debate. I know clearly there are more excellent ones to come, but he will struggle, I think, to top the topic because the official record, Madam Deputy Speaker, will read like a love letter to our nation's coastal communities, and one I think we can all see ourselves in, either because the honourable and right honourable members represent coastal communities, or for people like myself who do not, who spent our childhoods at Southport, at Blackpool, at Skegness and around the country, and those treasured memories. And he set out again, I think, very clearly the opportunities for our coastal communities, be they tourism, be they energy, be they natural beauty, but also the profound challenges, and this was echoed in the contributions of a number of colleagues, such as slower economic growth, higher levels of deprivation and real challenges in healthcare. And the Honourable Gentleman says that he felt that the system doesn't work, and I share a lot of that, and I've got some suggestions for how the system might change. He also, and I try not to take it personally, it was very clear that he was rather a dedicated minister rather than me, sat and responded to this debate. And I will address that directly shortly, but I just want to cover a number of contributions that colleagues made. Firstly, to start with contributions from my honourable friend from East Worthing and Shoreham, and from the member from Torbay, and my honourable friend, the member for East Thanet, with regards to housing and that integral challenge with housing in coastal communities. Too little building for too long. Well, this government's going to change that. 1.5 million homes in this Parliament. And I would say to colleagues, and I would say to anybody listening who's passionate about their coastal community, the way to make sure that's done in the right way, that respects local heritage, that respects local demand, that respects those areas of natural beauty, is to be involved in the local plan process. That's how to set the blueprint for excellent development in their community. It will bring, as my honourable friend, the member for Scarborough and Whitby said, jobs as well, opportunity for all year round jobs, great careers and skills. Of course, in that conversation on housing is the important point that a number of my colleagues, especially my honourable friend, the member for Truro and Falmouth, has raised with regards to second homes and short-term lets. This is something that she and I have spoken a lot of over the years. I must say, also my honourable friend and member for Camborne and Redruth. So this government, we are introducing a short-term let registration scheme to protect the spirit of our communities, notwithstanding the importance that short-term lets can have to the economy. We're abolishing the furnished holiday lets tax regime to remove the tax incentive that short-term let owners have over long-term landlords. And from this April, councils can opt to charge a council tax premium of up to 100% on second homes. But we recognise that maybe more will need to be done, and we're very keen to have that conversation with colleagues. And we are considering what additional powers we could give local authorities to enable them to respond to the pressures created by short-term lets and holiday homes. Colleagues also, and perhaps unsurprisingly, my honourable friend, the member for Sittingbourne and Sheppey, make important points around healthcare too. And I would really trumpet our government's 10-year health plan to reform the NHS as one that particularly coastal communities will benefit from, because those three big shifts, I've got, of course, my honourable friend, the care minister next to me too, but those three big shifts, the move from hospital to community, from analogue to digital, from sickness to prevention, there is a lot in that for coastal communities, and again, I would encourage colleagues to lean into that. My honourable friend, the member for South West and Lee, draws me on cockles. And what I would say to him, it sounds like Osborne's the real backbone of his community, but are facing some real hurdles. And if it is of value to him, I'd be very keen to meet with them and have the chance to have that conversation in full. My honourable friends from Blackpool, again, I think this perhaps points as an example for some of the partnership that central government, local government and local communities can have. So I would point to significant money, £90 million coming from this government for housing redevelopment in Blackpool, £40 million for the FE College as well, and the new civil service hub coming. You know, we believe Blackpool's best days are in front of them, and again, very keen to work with him in that regard. And similarly, I would say for my honourable friend for South West Devon, and she talked about the very, very strong opportunities in the private sector for development. I, of course, would add to that the £4.4 billion for the naval base at Devonport. And, of course, we have the excellent tool of the Freeport that we can work together on to draw that investment in. And I and colleagues are very keen to do that. And that the subject of Freeport takes me to the Essex coast, to my honourable friend, the honourable gentleman member for Harwich and North Essex, and he wanted to hear from this dispatch box a commitment to his community. I can give him that commitment. Our renewed commitment from what we inherited from the previous government with regards to the Freeport, I think, shows the potential that we believe in his community. Yes, clearly there are changes to local government coming. Also, the possibilities around devolution are outstanding as well. But I know, and I'll talk to this a little bit when I respond to the important point on dedicated minister, that I believe there are the skills, the knowledge and the experience in his community to shape it for the better and to build it for the days ahead. And our commitment is to give the power and tools to do so. And I'm very, very happy to recommit that today. Yes, very briefly, if possible.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for giving way. I'd just like to ask my honourable friend to confirm that this government understands a clear distinction between the challenges in rural communities from those in coastal ones, because I noticed that the Liberal Democrat spokesman used the word coastal and rural almost completely interchangeably, and we know the levels of deprivation in coastal communities are significantly different and with different challenges from those in rural communities. I'd like to have that confirmation from the government.
Minister.
That is an important point. Rural communities can be coastal communities and vice versa, but not always. And those challenges manifest very differently. The challenges, particularly around being the community at the end of the line, can make some very significant, profound challenges, and we absolutely accept that. So turning to the point that the honourable member made around a dedicated minister, and I will say to him, I think, and other colleagues have raised this as well, that I think he's selling himself short. Because the reality is, it isn't about a minister in government pulling the lever for North Norfolk, for Hamble Valley or anywhere else to transform their community. That is an inside job. And the promise from this government is a shift of power and resource from this place to their communities to change it. We've made a down payment with a plan for neighbourhoods covering Peterhead, for example. I hear some of the frustrations the honourable member said. Well, this is a way to rebalance it with power and resource for those people to change their community. And of the 75 in the plan for neighbourhoods, 25 are coastal, meaning a £500 million commitment. My honourable friend from South End East and Rochford talks about the Independent Commission on Neighbourhoods, and I think he will see a lot of that reflected in what we've done. But we want to move away, as I say gently to the opposition spokesperson, from that broken begging bowl culture of levelling up funds where communities were pitted against each other to more long-term sustained funding based on the need of that community, and that's what they will see. But the money is one point, but the power is the real thing for me, and that's what underpins our plan for change, that shift of power from this place to local communities. We're seeing that through devolution. Of course, 5 elected mayors already represent coastal areas, 2 more to come, Hull in East Yorkshire, Greater Lincolnshire in May. And that gives those communities those powers over housing, planning, transport, energy, skills, employment support and more to shape their place. And more coming down the line, 6 more areas, including 5 coastal communities in the devolution priority programme. Putting that together, Madam Deputy Speaker, that is a shift of money and power from this place to coastal communities to take on the challenges that they've had in the past and in partnership with central government build very exciting futures, be they in tourism, be they in climate, be they addressing their housing crises. That's what this government offers. That's what the future offers. And I think that's something to be really excited about. Thank you very much.
Steff Aquarone to wind up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm immensely grateful to members from across the House for their contributions and for echoing my call. I wanted to call out a couple of points I thought were exceptionally noteworthy. The members for Torbay and also South West Devon, speaking of the pride and opportunity, not just the challenges, Member for Southport, speaking about the challenge of being asset custodians of piers and other such things, and of East Thanet and Scarborough and Whitby, delighted to hear about the opportunities for skills development and young people. Time, Madam Deputy Speaker, does strange things in coastal communities, and I wanted just to leave one final image of the impression I was getting as I was listening to colleagues speak, which is of the volunteer lifeboat crews off the North Norfolk coast and how much they do to support and protect all of us in this country. Thank you.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes.